Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Here's Johnny.
Can I help you?
Yes, my name is Bond. James Bond.
Make your lives extraordinary. Restless. No photo. No photo.
When there is no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
Welcome to I Watch More Movies Than You, and please take that as a challenge. What else on earth can you spend $10 and then leave the planet for 2 hours? Only movies. Come join us as we experience, explore, and journey through the greatest art form in history.
And here we go.
Welcome to the I Watch More Movies Than You podcast. You got Ken.
You got Rob.
And we are here to deep dive into into Ari Aster in light of Beau is Afraid, coming out in a staggered release starting on the 21st, which is this coming Friday. Are you excited about it, Rob?
Oh, I'm so excited. I don't have words.
No, you are excited for real. Are you excited about it?
Yeah, no, I am excited for it. Very excited.
Okay, that's what you were saying before we started recording, so I'm a little taken aback. We are going to get into 2018 horror masterpiece Hereditary. You thought we were crazy without video? Watch the heck out. And then we're going to go to Midsommar, as he says it, like a sommelier of film.
Sorry.
Oh, boy. That's a 2019. He started shooting it right after Hereditary. He's actually over there before Hereditary actually hit theatrical wide release. And was already, because he had to get the field for it so they could build a village because everything was built by hand. So Ari had no time in between these two movies. It's kind of insane. He went to AFI. He started Ari Aster. Let's just jump in. He went to American Film Institute. He was born wherever? New York. And for the first few years, New York.
Born wherever.
Then he went to England with his family a little bit and then came back.
You stalking this guy?
What'd you say?
You just stalking this guy?
I am. When you get under my skin like this, you get stalked. Let that be a lesson to everybody.
Right.
By the way, if we ever get stalked, everybody's doing the online thing. I fear for you.
Wow.
I'm just gonna put that out there. Hereditary. I was hesitant, Rob, to even cover this movie this early on into our podcasting careers, if you will. Even though we've only each made about $4 or $5 million, but an episode. Hereditary's and so I'll go ahead and set the people up as if it needs an introduction for Hereditary, the 2018 horror masterpiece. Now that we're on the podcast, I can say that. Directed by Ari Aster. Aster, if you're a fan of The Office. Starring Toni Collette, Miley Shapiro, no relation. Gabriel Byrne, and of course Alex Wolff as Peter. Wonderful cast, by the way. Tony nominated for an Oscar, snubbed.
I remember when this movie came out. I'm not trying to interrupt. I remember when this movie came out. I was so excited for Toni Collette to potentially get an Oscar for this.
So you jinxed her.
Yeah, me and a lot of other people, because this was not this was a popular thing going around. There was a hashtag going around, Oscar for Tony.
Wow, and, that's cool.
It was such a disappointment that she didn't get it.
She was killer.
That she wasn't even in the running.
Yeah, she did get nominated, correct?
I don't know. I don't think she did.
2000. If it came out in 2018, would it be 2018 Oscars?
It would be 2019 Oscars.
Okay.
She may have been nominated, but she definitely did not get it.
No, I know she didn't win. That's just how it goes for the genre film.
Unfortunately,
I don't even think she was nominated.
I don't think she was. I don't think she was.
So Toni Collette's absolutely amazing in this Masterclass. She actually wanted, prior to accepting this role from Ari, and he had her eyes on her. He was very, very blown away by her. He's been watching her since, he said, his entire life. She told her publicist's agent she wanted to do something light. She wanted to do
Yeah,
comedies.
she did not want to do heavy stuff anymore.
Yeah. And she chose Hereditary.
Yeah, well, she couldn't. She said she couldn't put the script down.
I believe it.
I mean, when you do that, when you have something like that, you gotta take it.
I agree. I want to say this right off the bat too. If it's your first time listening to I Watch More Movies Than You, it's your first time on video, we will be back in person as we always record next week or whatever. This is just a one of life happened.
Yeah.
So I just want you to know that we are, again, to give everybody the 411. I'm an exhibitor of films. My brother there sells insurance. So we are bringing no experience.
I don't sell insurance. I need the people to know that.
He dabbles.
I dabble with insurance.
Dabbles in insurance. Okay. You're much like Batman in that. Sorry for the big people. So I'm like moving all these things around, are going to cover 3 movies, generally speaking, a week, releasing on Tuesday morning, generally speaking, where it's a spoiler-free review of a theatrical wide release that week, a deep and then 2 deep dives. One will always be horror, because horror is where the heart is. And then usually we're going to classic, and we're learning film critique as we go along this. We're reading books, watching videos, consuming content, so we can all kind of learn how to appreciate this art form together. And the more you learn about it, one thing I have realized, and the more we've dove into just true film appreciations, we are both absolute hysterical fanatics for cinema. The more I appreciate watching these movies. And there's some darn good movies we're going to cover. And I will say this right now, Ari Aster's Hereditary and Midsommar are going to be 2 of the coolest ones that get covered.
Oh, yeah.
This guy came onto the scene. Of course, he had the was it something the Johnson short, which is, I don't want to get into that on this one, but just to give people a list of Ari Aster's shorts prior to jumping into Hereditary. Awesome article in Dread Central. One was very well known at one of the theaters I worked at prior because of the subject material, but he had one called Basically, Cesta La Vie, Herman's Cure Tonic, Munchausen. That one's kind of famous, I believe.
Mm-hmm. I've heard of that.
Okay. TDF Really Works. The Strange Things About the Johnsons. If you want to melt your mind and have giant WTF moments, as for you, that is not for children.
No.
That's not for people to be watching in the room with you. It might not even be for you, but go ahead and Google it. You get a good picture of Ari Aster. You got the turtle's head and Schmeener Beaner. No, I made that last one up, but I didn't. So then comes Hereditary. Then came Midsommar. And then Beau is Afraid. Which is really neat. Before Beau is Afraid was like announced, I was listening to a podcast where Ari was interviewed. And it was during Midsommar. It was right before it released. And he said, the guy asked him, what's next? Because Ari just goes bang, 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 you know. And he said either a melodrama or a comedy. And I kind of wonder if Beau's Afraid is not like, it seems like it's both.
Yeah, it does.
I'm so excited about that though.
Yeah.
But like I said, horror is where the heart is. We're going to get into Hereditary.
Did he say why he kind of moved away from horror in this upcoming? Or do you think there's going to be elements of...
I've heard him discuss... This is like an Ari Aster deep dive 2 people, so it's going to be fun. I've heard him discuss it. It's not quite like Sam Raimi, where he's indifferent towards it. He definitely likes it. He specifically likes the genre film. He thinks it gives... Those kind of give you like rules to express certain things by, and awesome like vehicles to like deep dive into trauma and to other things that you really... It's hard to do outside of those mediums, if that makes sense. You get so many creative tools when you're making a horror movie. But he did say, like, he does not consider himself a horror director, which is wild. Having directed. I mean, it's kind of like once you release the art, you don't really get to control that.
Wild, because I was describing Hereditary earlier to someone that it's highbrow horror. You know, my wife and I.
If you say elevated horror, you know we have to turn this off.
I just mean you have horror is a wide range of movies there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you can have a slasher, and you can have the low budget movies that you put on to like kind of make fun of or laugh with it.
100%.
And then you have movies that like, because I would put Hereditary in the same camp as like The Shining.
Wow.
Because it has so much to say. It's not just about...
That's high praise.
It's not just about the scare or the jump tactics or the special effects or
Is it
lack
because there was
thereof.
that scene? Here's payment. A little on the nose, Ari, if I may. A little
No,
on the nose.
because it's really about other things, isn't it? It's not really about a demonic possession.
You know, it's interesting. I 100% agree.
Mhm.
And he even said, as he was doing it, he didn't use the word horror a lot. He now admits that Hereditary is a true blue horror film.
100%.
And he does not admit the same for Midsommar.
Midsommar has a lot of different things going on. I don't know that I would classify it as horror either.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's nuanced, and we'll definitely cover it next.
I appreciate this though because I mean I think I would do the same thing if I was a director. I wouldn't stay in one camp the whole time. You know, I'd see what I could do.
No, I get it. I'm such a horror nut. I probably would just keep doing it. I'd be like Brian De Palma or something, just keep like making. And which, by the way, Brian De Palma's Carrie was one of his inspirations for this, and in general, he loves that film. It's very interesting. It's an indie one.
Oh.
But yeah, he said he doesn't consider it. So he didn't use the word horror to even pitch this initially, but then he realized he can't just go like family melodrama, whatever. It wouldn't make any money. It wouldn't get any investors, you know. And so he took it from like two angles, which I think that's what makes Hereditary be mentioned, like you said, with The Shining, which is insane we're even doing that. But that just shows you the impact this movie has had. Hereditary, there's like pre-Hereditary horror and there's after it. At least in like, I think you do too. We take ownership of this one too. Like, devour your verb. I mean, it's such a like fundamental movie.
This is a movie that's I don't think it gets as many rewatches for me like something like The Shining could, because I think
it's hard. In
some ways, this movie's a lot harder to digest. It's tough.
I watched it alone. I did a double feature, Hereditary, Midsommar, down in the basement, pitch black. And I'll be honest, that was not easy. And like, I felt like I even had somebody comment on Twitter saying that's a tough double feature. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to like come up for breath with a comedy or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, hug my wife. Like, it was a lot. Hereditary is a lot. Hereditary's suffocating.
So a quick question here. With Hereditary, you saw this movie when it came out in the theaters?
I saw it in theaters, yes, sir.
Okay. So that was what? That was 2018. Okay. Now that you've seen it recently, and I watched it recently, now that you're a dad with a kid on the way, does this make it so much harder to watch? Or can you divorce what's going on in real life when you're watching?
See what's on my shirt?
Pet Cemetery?
I was just talking about what you brought up. Okay.
Really?
It's a Pet Cemetery shirt where I remember watching if I may, because this is answers. I was watching the Pet Cemetery remake with my cousin at the big theater, and I always remembered.
Cousin that exposed himself to
it is. Okay. It's Brandon. Shout out Brandon. B-Brand. And my love for horror. He's a big reason for it. But we were watching it, and I noticed he couldn't look at Gage get hit by the Mack truck. You know, the 18-wheeler.
Yeah.
And he was a dad, and I wasn't. He had a little boy. His little girl has a little boy. Little boy, she was either pregnant with or just had, but he did have the little girl. I think he may have just had the little girl already. And I'm protecting names, but I don't think it matters. Kids, you know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Her name's Peony.
Yeah.
Peony.
Yeah.
I'm joking. Peony is not a name.
Yeah.
So
it could be.
Her name's Gage. No, I'm kidding. So I talked to him about it. He said, this guy can stomach anything in a movie. He just has total control like that. You know what I mean? It's wild. And he said, he just couldn't. And I think that's what's powerful about King is he'll take one of the absolute worst things that can happen in life, expand upon it, put his characters in it, and then you just watch, you know? And so, I could not put on, if I'm being honest, Pet Cemetery right now. And Hereditary, to see Tony play the character so well of two parts, and I'll go through it, but I will say these parts because everybody knows, of hating her child that much, admitting she didn't want to have him, and the other one of losing a child. The darkness in that house, I can't contend with it. And they even take the teenagers serious. Because Ari even said he doesn't know how he would react to it either.
I watched an interview where he said that.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry, not him, the actor who played.
Oh, cool. I heard Ari say it. That's cool.
Yeah, he said that he and we can get to it when we get to that part of the movie, but he literally said that he doesn't know if he would have acted differently had he been in that driving situation in real life. He's like, I can't throw stones, essentially, is what he was saying.
Yeah.
Because
that's honest.
Because that's, you don't know what shock will do to you.
No one does. And,
like that.
And so to answer your question, it was tougher. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it was for me.
Yeah.
It was, because I forgot about how that scene took place.
Hey.
Perfect.
Look out behind you.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad if we actually use the film on here, if we use video for this podcast, I'm glad they can see the dead behind my eyes when you do something like that.
Me too. I wish you could see. I have the giant NECA Friday the 13th final chapter doll, and I have this subtle toy phone over there from Skinamarink, and you can't see either of them because it zooms so much in on us.
I just have Batman stuff.
I like that. I wish I could show all my stuff. Batgirl. So Hereditary, by Ari Aster. I wanted to cover this. I knew we would cover this. It's unavoidable, just like The Shining's coming at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe we save that for October.
Hey.
It'll be its own episode. It's just so near and dear to the heart, Yeah. But Hereditary is one of the scariest movies I've ever seen.
I 1000% agree with you.
Yeah, it's literally one of those things that reignites the magic of cinema for me, though, because I was having these weird, pompous thoughts. I was thinking, I'm not scared of any movies. I know I'm a man now. I know they're not real. I know they're not whatever. Because I used to, I grew up just absolutely watching horror from single digits age. So
yeah,
I've always had this tenuous relationship with it. It's love. It's grown into love. Yeah. But I was like, I can do this. I was like, this is silly. Why am I even apprehensive?
Mm-hmm.
And then I sat down and did it. And I looked away. I winced. I checked behind me 572 times. When I went up to go to the bath, I was a kid again.
Makes you look at the corners of your house a little differently.
And how cool is that? Because it wasn't a jump scare that he lets it just breathe.
That's one thing about this movie. You don't get jump scares, really.
Yeah, I agree.
He finds a great way to. Well, a lot of people. I don't necessarily agree with this, but a lot of people will say that a jump scare is a cheap move, and maybe sometimes it is.
I think there's nuance there,
but I
don't mind it.
I think here, it's much more appropriate that it's the slow burn, Because
he said the original one.
That's happening to this family, isn't it? It's nothing quick about this. This is a generation upon generation curse, essentially.
It's in the name.
It's in the name. It's literally hereditary.
It sneaks up on you and then surrounds you, and it rewards rewatches. By the way,
it does.
Difficult as they may be,
it does. Remind me, I have such a crazy fact about the end of this movie that I did not notice the first time I watched it.
Really?
Yes.
So that's what's so cool about this movie. So, yes. I think a lot of people probably thought lightning in the bottle because this went to, I can't remember the first one, then it went to South by Southwest, Overlook Film Festival, all these things. And it wasn't to be picked up. They already had all the distribution and stuff. It was literally to spread buzz. That's how this movie annihilated audiences.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, it's a powerful movie. So, Hereditary by Ari Aster, 2018. And just to give the people, if they need a little storyline, when her mentally ill mother passes away, Annie, played by Toni Collette, and her husband Gabriel Byrne, he doesn't even say his name in this, by the way, and son, played by Alex Wolff, which is Peter, and daughter, played by Millie Shapiro, all mourn her loss. That was her grandmother. The family turned to different means to handle their grief, including Annie and the daughter both flirting with the supernatural.
I've been there.
They each begin. We'll dive into that.
There's no real joke there.
Yeah. It's just funny that you do that. I had a ghost hunting group in high school, and I called ourselves the Polter Guys.
Hold on. you had, you had a you had a ghost hunting group in high school.
I promise. I'm not even
Wow.
joking. I'm not even being
Hey,
no
quick
hyperbole.
question: was that a way to just make sure that you held on to your virginity, or
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the only reason. No, I said I had friends, bunch of us dudes. It's like that scene in Zombieland. When he says questioning virginity, totally understandable or whatever. He's talking about playing World of Warcraft in this Tower of Mountain Dews. Been there also, by the way, giant WoW player.
I know you have.
I'm just what they call, ladies and gentlemen, a winner. No, I really was. I invented like there was these forums back in the day for like local haunts, and I can admit this now. I don't think anybody that was a part of it will ever listen. And it was probably known, but I really leaned into it, and it was really interesting when it got some other comments. But there was an old mill near where you and I live,
Okay.
and I don't want to give too much information, but it's on a really desolate street over like woods and water, and it's really alone. Never seen it used ever. And I said it was haunted, and I created this entire backstory, and I put it on forums, and then other people, strangers, were commenting, "Oh, I've heard about that. I've seen her standing on the road. I've seen," and they were just playing.
This is something you completely made up.
Completely, it really shows the power of persuasion, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
But we broke into it,
Really?
and everything. Yeah, and then one of the members was calling out to this entity.
Shut up.
And they I don't know if they'd say it to this day, but everybody in there thought they heard her and ran out.
Mm.
And guess what? It doesn't exist anymore. It was demolished.
Really?
Yeah, gone.
It's kind of like the Black-Eyed Kids, right? Like how those internet stories got started. Have you ever read those?
No.
Oh my god! After this, in the dark,
Dude, I'm
read
so tired of being scared for like a night. I just did an Ari Aster double feed.
just read these Black-Eyed Children stories. They're insane.
Really?
And they will. It's all just. It's one of those just like internet like things that
I love
blew up.
those.
And they all just like took part in it, and those are some of the scariest stories I've ever read in my life.
Are you serious? Don't let me
Yes.
forget. I'm very
Yeah.
interested.
And they're short too. They're
In stature? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, like me.
Stop. You're a giant among men.
In some ways.
So sorry, people.
Sorry.
I was just in calling BS. Even Ari Aster couldn't write that script, brother. So
All right, take us through Hereditary.
Hereditary. So we open, well, if I may, people, now that you're seeing how the meat is made, I chose my words carefully.
I was about to say.
Phone notes. Let me pull them up if I may. The first thing I saw was momming, so that's going to be interesting.
Wow, that's a private note, isn't
I'm
it?
trying to think about where it. Yeah, we opened up. There's a dollhouse. Next.
Well,
No, I actually am trying to remember.
but isn't that dollhouse scene interesting because it takes you?
Oh, I love
Ari Aster
that.
showing you the beginning and the end of the film at the same time.
But he does that in both of these.
Yeah, and he's kind of showing you also what this family is. They're just playthings. They're toys.
100%.
They're dolls to be had. It's not their house.
Because yeah, the story does begin exactly right with the viewer looking out from the window in a workshop to a tree house. It turns and it zooms into a bedroom and a dollhouse. It's the workshop. And then the dad wakes his teenage son Peter, 13-year-old daughter Charlie, and they're going to the funeral of their 78-year-old grandmother Ellen Taper Lee. And then, but Steve finds Charlie, the freaky little girl, sleeping in the treehouse. Been there. Actually, I always wanted treehouse. I never had treehouse.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Let's build a treehouse now. What do you think?
I think it ended up turning into an Ari Aster type situation. I'd put a red light in there. I'd be naked, standing in it, breathing heavy. So then Steve's wife, Annie, who's an artist who sculpts miniature dioramas. They're sick. I'd love that from a filmmaking perspective, too, because the editing and you can go from that to the actual set. Everything has to be exact, from the curtains to whatever. I think it just looks good. It's very visually pleasing. Much like me in the buff in a mirror.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. To my wife. And only
in my driveway for some reason.
in your driveway. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I dropped off his mic and I had my bare buttocks out.
Yep, he sure did.
It was dark, but that thing lit up
Well,
the cul-de-sac.
There was a.
I thought it was dark on me, but you're right. It was only
It
you.
was, no, there was. I saw everything. Sorry.
Everything. Sorry, your eyeballs.
Sorry.
So
Sorry,
Annie
my
talks to
dreams.
Charlie. Hey, you talking about my butt or Hereditary?
I think the people know what they want.
Annie talks to Charlie about Ellen at bedtime that night. It's her dead grandmother. Cares. Charlie claims that her grandma always wished Charlie was a boy. That ends up first watch. You don't understand how important that is.
Yeah, it's very important.
To Annie's confusion, Charlie also wonders aloud who'll care for her now that Ellen's dead, because she cared for Charlie. You later find out because the dad didn't let her anywhere near the son.
Yeah.
Good call, Dad, by the way.
Yeah, for real.
Any confusion, she wonders aloud, and Annie later, this is actually really scary. It's one of our first scares in the movie. Annie sees a haunting vision of Ellen after looking through a memory book in the workshop. A lot of speculation on that, as if it was the first brush with the supernatural in Hereditary, or was she having like a psycho visual, just lost her mom mind trip? What do you think?
I think it has to be the former.
You think it's paranormal?
I think it has to be, yeah, because at this point paranormal work was already taking place. So I feel like it had to be that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I can see that.
I don't think he wants you to think that yet. I think he wants to
100% correct.
To bring you in. Like, is this really happening? Hey, are you still there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I cannot see you.
Okay. Well, as long as you can hear me, we're fine.
Yeah.
We knew this. We knew this may happen.
Yeah.
So I'll be working on that. So basically, just to keep us where we were, and Rob, if you don't mind, I can even toss you as I unplug and plug that back in. She's talking to her. She sees her dead grandmother in the corner, right? Mm-hmm. And then we cut to the Charlie's classroom window where a bird flies into it. Can you kind of at least do that scene while I do this?
I'm trying to remember that scene.
Actually, all I'm going to do is like unplug and plug back in. But to give you a hint, it has something to do with Charlie going outside and cutting its head off.
That's right. That's the hook.
Is that a good hint?
So yeah, this to interject this real quick though, I feel like the scene before this, you're asking, is it paranormal or is it some like psychosomatic? I think because of this following scene, it has to be paranormal work from the beginning. Severing the bird's head, carrying it outside, that lends itself to. I mean, this is foreshadowing. So, I think there's already a possession in work here. Because we know, well, you don't know at this point, but this is foreshadowing what happens to Charlie. Later in the film,
big time,
she gets decapitated. So I feel like maybe there you are. I can see you.
Let's go, baby.
Oh nope, you got. Sorry, people. No, you're back.
Big Daddy back. Daddy's back. Daddy's back.
Yikes! But wouldn't you say that though? Like, wouldn't you say that this is the paranormal already at work with the fact that her?
Yeah, I think so. I think the first one's up for grabs. I think at this point, because there's two things. Do you know what it's interesting? Because there's two competing ideas. That's why I think I was saying earlier, this movie is so great. You can take it as a family navigating trauma in the worst of ways.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But that works really well too.
That's what I think this film is really about. Like I said, it's not just about demonic possession. Like,
do you remember what they were talking about? This goes right to, because you asked. Yes, I think it could be the first brush with it, or the second brush with it.
Yeah, I think so.
But I mean, there's a really interesting. By the way, there's a lady that touches her mom's dead lips at the funeral. I thought was wild.
Yeah.
So they're covering something in the classroom, right? I'll get into it, but I think it's a theme, a competing theme, one of the themes in Ari Aster's movie, because it's not what she was covering. It's later what Peter's class was covering.
Okay.
And written on there is punishment brings wisdom. Pardon me, that's another thing. That's honestly, I like that one
Sorry,
too. Though.
people.
Yeah, sorry, people. But there's something written up there, and I can't remember what character in Greek mythology, but basically what was being battled out in his classroom was predestination.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, like you said, they're pawns in a dollhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And his teacher asked, would it be more, is it more tragic that it happens and they didn't have a say-so in it? Or you know what I mean? Remember, he poses that question.
Yeah, because they are predestined.
So if she doesn't have a say-so, that foreshadows, I accept that that's part of the possession happening, because we find out Payman, there's a reason that her grandmother wishes she was a boy.
Payman is the entity.
But Payman's not been mentioned yet, but he's there.
Right. Yeah, he's there.
So, that happens, and then a woman across the street waves at Charlie after she cut the head off the bird. Normal thing for Charlie to do there. I get 2 words: therapy.
Yeah.
And then Annie begins researching apparitions. She's like, okay, I saw my dead mom in the corner. Not super normal, but let's see, maybe it's paranormal. Steve receives word from a cemetery. This part was crazy. This is when I really understood I was at the mercy of a great filmmaker and I have no idea what's coming next. Mm-hmm. Because the father receives word from the cemetery that Ellen's grave was desecrated.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what? And then decides not to tell his wife. Also important.
Right.
But then Annie tells Steve she's going to go to a movie, vibes, but actually attends a grief counseling support group. When she arrives at the meeting and it's dark outside, Annie openly discusses her mom's mental health issues. And all of a sudden, you kind of, including dissociative identity disorder and dementia. There's some points where you think here and other you're going to get some word vomited exposition, but it's not that. It's never that, because like you hear her do that, but then you hear like some of the other people talk, and then all of a sudden later in the film you put pieces together and you realize all of that was relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I actually really like her parts in there. Charlie sees a strange light in her bedroom. That's an interesting, we'll come back to that. And then the gallery owner, who she, the mother is building all the dollhouses for, calls about progress. And then in that, though, we see a shot where she's working on with Ellen in it, her mother, her dead mother. Then we go right along to Peter, teenage boy in college or in high school. Sorry, he was smoking some dope. And he's like, "Yo, dog, I'm cool." And then all of a sudden,
you sound like Dwight from The Office trying to communicate.
Be a volunteer sheriff deputy.
Yep.
On the weekends, and I had to put down over however many dogs at the shelter. We could use the hands. So, Peter wants to go to a party. Seems to whatever. So where he hopes to see this girl named Bridget. Hey, you know what? I've been saying MacGuffin, maybe a MacGuffin. But this movie doesn't even really. Wait a second. Anyways, hold on. What did you say?
So I'm glad you prepared for this.
So Chuck, he has to bring Chuck. The mom's like, "You got to bring your sister with you to the party." No dude wants to hear that, but he's like, "Whatever. Let's go, Charlie." Sorry.
Kind of weird that she just said, like, "Yeah, take your little sister to a party."
I agree. That's a great point.
That's weird, isn't it?
It's unnatural. It's a little unnatural. Take your 13-year-old girl sister. Who is
am I reading too much into it with that, or do you think that's something like some kind of? Even though there's so much focus on the female characters,
I think strings are being pulled.
Yeah,
I do. I
there's
think
so much focus on
that
female characters here, but like ultimately, what's his name, Pinocchio, needs to be in a male body.
Pinocchio?
Whatever his
it's
name
Pinocchio. It's Payman.
Payman.
One of the kings of hell.
Pinocchio, whatever.
He's right behind you. Like this.
That would have been better not on video.
True. I was just thinking, if my mom was like walking around, I would crap my pants 10 ways to Sunday.
And your mom was there?
No, she like opened the door or something crazy.
Oh.
She knows better. But
Right.
so anyway, let's go to a party. Boom, bang, boom. Charlie's decapitated. Boom. It happens.
But no, so is it, back to that though. They're
There I
leaving.
go.
There you go
Yeah,
again.
keep going.
Sorry, people. Um, but so they're driving home. Clearly, Peter's high, um, and Charlie rolls down the window because
She had
she's
some
not.
peanuts in a cake, right?
Yeah, she like purposely ate peanuts, knowing she's allergic,
Do
right?
you think it
So
was that's do you think it was purpose?
I do, I do. I think at this point she's already possessed by Palpatine or whatever his name
It's
is,
Palpatine.
and I think the nuts are purposeful. I mean, because she knows she's
These
allergic.
nuts.
She knows she's allergic, so I think it is purposeful. I think she's possessed. I think she's fully possessed by this point because uh, she eats the peanuts and then she sticks her head out the window because she can't breathe. Um,
She says,
so
"I am infinite."
there is some kind of
I'm joking.
maybe there's some kind of control she still has because she's trying to breathe, but or maybe it's
Maybelline.
maybe it's Maybelline, or whatever his name is. I can't remember. I don't know why I can't remember his name.
King
Um,
Payman.
Payman,
Yep, King Payman.
King Payman. I'm not gonna remember that.
It's like
Anyway,
Paimen or something.
she sticks her head out and just gets decapitated by like a telephone pole.
Yeah, he swerves to miss an animal.
Hmm.
And yeah, she gets got. The
And
animal put there or fate?
it's so purposeful. I think. I mean, I could be wrong, but I would make that argument because that happened so that eventually Payman could take over Peter's body.
Yeah, at
So
that point on the first watch, we don't know that yet.
we don't know that yet. But in hindsight, I fully and I mean, if you have a better argument, like go for it. But I think she's possessed. I think she's 100% possessed by that point.
Yeah, because we were told some stuff later that points to that. Especially when the mother finds her friend at the AA meeting.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Horrible
Mm-hmm.
stuff that happened. And the friend, to get her to actually stop, starts just word vomiting her trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that are some dead kids.
Mm-hmm.
So there is definitely a physical manifestation of this possession, especially when you're not inhabitable for King Payman. So I definitely could see the act of assisted suicide being driven by him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the animal on the road, I mean, a cultist could have put it there. It just happened.
Mm-hmm.
Or, again, fate's just pulling the strings.
I definitely think that the cult behind this, I don't necessarily know that they're pulling the strings, but I definitely think what they're doing is perpetuating the events that happen.
Yeah, I don't give them a lot. I don't give them too much either. But they're
Right,
definitely
because-
moving something along.
Because I definitely think that if Charlie didn't die this way, she would have died a different way. That child was going to die. And this is what we were talking about earlier of like, this is heinous. It's heinous how this child dies. It's heinous that a child dies. And this is what makes like
Is this the worst child death in a movie?
I can't think of a worse one.
Yeah, I know there's an element of recency bias, but like
And there probably is.
this is up there, man.
But this is up there. And you're right, recency bias definitely plays in because I'm trying to remember the last movie where I saw like a horrific child's death.
I don't really seek those out.
I don't either. I try to avoid those kind of films. And that's why there you are. This is why this is a hard rewatch for me. And when I saw this originally, I felt something in this scene, but knowing that my kid is just like a month away from being born,
And you're a dude. Imagine putting yourself in Peter's shoes, a teenage guy. You're driving high and you decapitate your sister.
Yeah, you don't
have a strange relationship with your mother.
Yeah.
And you leave her for her to find her.
There's already animosity between her and Peter, isn't there?
Yeah.
Because she admits later she was not ready to be a mother. She didn't think she felt like a mother. So
he picks up on that.
Having him as a son has been challenging, if not regretful in some ways.
And she sleepwalks and like almost kills him while sleepwalking. So that's obviously going to throw some.
What's so disturbing is after this scene is the following scenes where Toni Collette, and this is where she should have got the Oscar.
Are we going past Charlie experiencing a vision of her grandmother surrounded by fire and then the clucking noise, by the way? This movie will make you afraid of this.
Yeah.
And some of the biggest, I'd argue that's almost a jump scare when that presents itself a couple times.
Sound is a little bit of a jump scare in this movie because like you cut to the scene of Peter in bed. He just goes home. He doesn't wake up his mom. He doesn't wake up dad. He doesn't do anything, but he just gets out of the car and you don't see it, but you just see him next, like laying in bed, wide-eyed, like he didn't get a wink of sleep that night.
Gosh.
He's laying there.
Great performance, by the way.
Just hears Toni Collette's devastating scream cry. And it's bone chilling.
Absolutely.
Because we as an audience experience a child's death. That's bad enough. Now we have to experience the immediate reaction to a parent. This is why you see this in a lot of film. You see like time pass, even if it's just hours or days, because I think it's so hard to, one, pull off the grieving parent immediately after a tragedy like this. And two, even if you can, it's so upsetting. I think a lot of filmmakers, understandably so, would opt to skip past such a horrific time period for a parent.
He plays it interesting. You actually don't get to see her initial, you just hear it.
You hear it, and in some way it's worse. Yeah. In some way it's worse because you're focused on Peter. You don't expect it necessarily. You're just like, wow,
so much darkness.
He's messed up. You don't know before that scream. You don't know that could have been hours, days, weeks, months after, and
I never thought about that
because he's still wrestling. And then you hear her scream, and you know it's hours after the event.
Yeah. So he leaves his sister's headless body for the mother to find in the morning. Mm-hmm. And again, that's one of those things where it'd be easy to pass judgment, but what
would you do?
And I hope no one ever has to answer that. And I don't know if it can be answered honestly because the amount of shock, no one knows. Maybe that.
No one knows.
In his defense, he was trying to take her to a hospital when when the moron ate some peanuts. It's our fault. So then Annie returns home.
Yeah, and that's it. That's the whole movie.
Yeah, that's it. No, they have a funeral, right, for Charlie.
And that's so sad too, because even the visual there of just her trying to cling on to the casket.
I mean, yeah, this
was so hard to watch.
It's extremely hard to watch.
And excuse me. You know, I mean, it's a child, so like it's just hard for any parent to watch something like that. But
it's a devastating movie.
I'm trying to get into like the parent shoes here because my wife's expecting a girl, and so like focused on like I don't know. It was so hard to.
I can't believe how well he captured that though, especially because it's pure theatrical. To my understanding and all the interviews I've heard, he's not experienced anything close to it. So like in Midsommar, you could argue the breakup and legit, but Toni Collette's performance, all of it was just a perfect storm. Like this is a dark movie. I would even argue if you're not in a good place, I wouldn't really revisit this too much.
No, for sure. And if you have any kind of like tragedy like that in your life, or that's something that gives you a lot of anxiety, just in general, I would skip this. And I hate to say it because it's such a well put together.
Let me ask you this though, because like one of the things is horror is also catharsis. So in a
Mhm.
way, is there a chance like exposure therapy could happen?
I think, yeah. I mean, I think for some people,
This depends on
I
the
think some
person.
people need to face it and need to hold on to it, or um, find some way to not relive it, but you know, find some way like an outlet for it.
Yeah.
And some
Right.
people need to. Some people will just be triggered too much to the point of like the PTSD of whatever
Stephen
can
King
really.
had an interesting perspective. He basically says he was feeding the gators down in the bottom of his mind so that they stay down there and he stays up here.
Well, that's we talked I guess last week about Psycho and about how a spin-off show Bates Motel has a cystic fibrosis character. I ran away from that for a while, and then
Hmm.
when I was in a good place mentally, I came back to it, and I I identify with this character so much. I completely shifted my focus onto her,
Hmm.
and she was who I rooted for through the whole thing. So I got a little bit of both there,
Yeah.
and this is why there's another film out there that's CFX that I avoid completely. I've never seen it.
5 feet apart.
Yep.
Yeah. Remember you talking about it when it came out.
Yep.
Um, okay. So Rob's story hour anyways. Annie returns home. I'm joking. No, I love it. I love it. But so they have the worst thing a parent can do. They have a funeral for their child.
Yeah.
And before she can, after that, you get this shot as they're holding the funeral of the dad looking through the sketchbook of Charlie. And then Peter has a panic attack while smoking marijuana before he bikes home from school, and he rides home in the dark. Annie's just grieving alone while sitting in the car of the driveway. One of these just horrific pictures of just absolute grief. And then so Annie, props to her, the mother, she drives to a grief support group meeting. Decides to turn around while she's in the parking lot, though, and it's dark when she arrives. However, before she can leave, fellow group member Joan spots Annie and stops her to talk. And we hit on that earlier. But Joan confides with Annie because she knows she just lost a kid. Like, hey, I lost my child and grandson a few months ago, drowning.
Yeah. Yeah, and isn't it interesting though, real quick, that she says that only after she feels Annie slipping away from her, right?
Yeah,
Isn't
and
that like that?
I'll be honest though. On my first watch, I thought she's just a sweetheart.
Well, yeah, on the first watch,
On
the
my
second
first
watch,
watch,
so yeah, the same. But she in the first watch, it seems like she's just desperate to have someone to,
yeah, and to go
someone that
through
will
that
help.
and come out the other side, I think you want to save people.
Yeah,
But that's not what's happening here. You come to find out, and we already
yeah,
said tons of spoilers here. It's obvious.
yeah.
Um, so she goes to, she confides in her. You get that conversation. Annie returns home. Her husband tries to make love to her. Like, he puts his arm on her. That's all. She rebuffs him. And then she sleeps in the attic. It's normal.
Yeah, as you do.
Yeah. What? Peter hears
You're
Charlie's
right.
clucking noise
You just love doing that,
and
don't you?
sees what he thinks is a vision of his dead sister in his room. It's actually Rob without pants on. No, dead sister, but it appears to be his own hoodie in the corner. That's actually a thing that happens when you see dark figures that make it look. That's there's a survival mechanism there. That's what's neat though. The things that keep happening have a supernatural reason and potentially a
Yes,
physical.
because that's what this movie is. This movie, like in its bones, is about abuse and trauma and the dysfunction of a family when
And
you
the
have.
hellish King Payment.
Yep.
So Annie, we go to the next day, visits Joan at Joan's apartment. And he tells Joan about the sleepwalking incident, which she doused. This was a wild scene and story. And he tells Joan where she was sleepwalking and doused Peter and Charlie from head to toe in paint thinner and herself before waking up to stop herself from lighting a match.
Jeez.
I think I laugh because it's like a defense mechanism.
Because it's so wild.
It's insane. I don't know. It's insane. And she's just holding them. And then she said after that, her relationship with her kids were never the same. Interesting thought there. Do you think that was strings being pulled by this dark entity, King Payman? Because it would have taken
Yeah,
out the male
probably.
body.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, That's the thing. I think this psychoticness can be interwoven
Hey,
with
Hereditary. Remember she talked about her grandmother.
with King Pikachu or whatever, because again, I think it's supposed to be about both things.
Yeah.
So I think wherever you see one, the other exists, because really the demonic entity of this movie, I think, is just to drive home very real issues, and that's why this is so horrifying.
What if it was good forces that would have had her killing her kids to stop this return of this king of hell?
Mm.
Uh,
Trying to stop the family line so that this can't continue, because we know from her little support group friend, this has to go through Annie's family.
we see Joan's mat, by the way, pagan demonic
So
symbols
that's right.
on the door.
So what do you think Joan killed the male members of her family that she was
I think that Joan. I heard this on a podcast. I think that it was with a gentleman who was actually talking with Ari, but it was before I think they brought him on. I can't remember, but I heard on the podcast where the theory is that Joan, because I gave it some thought, like, did it just go wrong, or can you just not like saddle this demonic entity so bad things happen? That's kind of their MO, right? So I think that it was an attempt by her, this high priestess of this cult, we're kind of given later, last scene, but try to do it through her bloodline and
right, like she's trying to bring King Pepperoni over her bloodline,
wrong
so that
bloodline.
But it's not. It doesn't work.
She's a mudblood.
It has to be Annie's family because it's hereditary.
I do believe it's hereditary.
Mm-hmm.
But then Steve finds her, so we get that shot, which is great. And then Steve, the husband, finds Annie constructing a disturbing diorama of the scene. By the way, I meant to say that the scene, I brushed over this, where she was recreating the scene with her mom earlier. Her dead mother, was the breast was being sucked by her. It's interesting. I paused it there for a long time.
You did.
No, I'm kidding. So Steve finds Annie constructing another disturbing diorama. Let's get this lady away from the dollhouses for a minute. Where Chuck died. So Steve, Annie, and Peter have this really awkward dinner. I thought this was one of the most powerful scenes in the movie. And then in this scene, Annie blames her son for Charlie's death.
That's such a powerful scene.
You know that was off the cuff.
It wasn't really.
I read that wasn't scripted.
So Toni Collette just like went.
I read that.
Boy, that speaks a lot, so much for her and for Peter, the actor who played Peter.
100%. I got it right here, brother.
Because the way he's staring at her. That's. Oh,
his performance is overshadowed by the monstrosity that was Toni Collette's performance.
Yeah,
but he was amazing. If he was weak, it doesn't work.
100%. He was great. And him just sitting there, just
his eyes. He did so much with his eyes.
But I love what she said, because Alex Wolff. She's not. It's almost like she's not even blaming him for her death.
Actually, yeah, I like what she says too at the end of it.
It's about you. It's you. I don't forgive you because you don't admit you've done anything wrong.
And I wish I could be a shield so you don't have to feel that guilt.
Yeah,
but I can't.
Yeah. And you basically tell them you have to feel this because she said no one in this family admits when they're wrong, and that's so powerful. That's so powerful because all that saying is in the real world. Well, in this movie, it's saying that King Pulaski or whatever has got this whole family in a chokehold.
Bill Butler.
There's no there's no hope for any of these characters. And then the real world application of that is a family can feel like such a safe or super not safe place. There are not these conversations.
Yeah.
There are not these conversations of, hey, I'm sorry I did that.
In a weird way, I thought it might be the healthiest one they had as a family. Because she aired her grievance, and then he comes right back and says, it's your fault. You made her go to the party. So there's no true progress, but they both got this off their chest.
Mhm.
It should have been progress. It should have been cathartic, but I think Ari keeps that
They're
from
both
us.
right, unfortunately.
I know, and that's how messy. I don't know how he uses a vehicle just to show how messy life is.
Yeah.
And I think these moments do get people so disoriented.
Mhm.
But being there, just floating above that like dinner table and watching, was so incredibly hard because we're selfish. We've immediately put ourselves in that person. What would we do? How would that
100%.
feel? And I think I would collapse.
Yeah.
I don't even want to go there. And but so they do that. And then we go to the next scene where Annie's going to the art store, like a Hobby Lobby type place.
Yeah.
And then guess who she runs into? By Queen Joan.
Oh, Joan.
I almost said Joan Rivers, but Joan excitedly explains to Annie, "You must come to this open seance." All the guys are doing it. And it changed her skepticism about psychics. And Joan does a great job of conveying, hey, I was a skeptic too. Listen here, there's something special going on.
Mhm.
I talked to my dead son and grandson.
Mhm.
I think you talked to Payman, but
Yeah.
so she tells Annie that a medium was able to conjure her dead grandson Louis and taught her how to seance. So they, all right, she's like, whatever. And in grief, it also shows, I heard this point out, like how susceptible one in grief is to persuasion,
Mhm.
to being manipulated.
Because you look for answers.
Anything.
You look for anything that gives you rhyme or reason or closure because we can't stand chaos.
No. And this movie
It's uncomfortable because if you take out the demonic element here, this is chaos that a teenage boy got a little too maybe high at a party, swerves to miss an animal that's just happens to be on the road, and at the same time your kid sister's like heads hanging out the window. That's chaos.
Yeah, I mean, it's worst case scenario type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like this Ari presents it lived out.
Isn't it interesting how she says, like, you should do this because she says it's important that everyone in your family's there. She makes it clear that it has to be everyone. And the way she words it is, make sure everyone's there. Everyone has to be in the house. Your son, everyone.
She says son specifically while saying
She
that.
says son specifically so that if she does this, that kind of, it's like a subliminal message. It's like, Peter has
There's so
to be
many
part
of those. This rewards rewatches if you can stomach it. There's so many.
If you can stomach
I wanted
it,
to say
yeah.
this line too. I meant to. There was a line after Charlie dies, and one of the things that the mom says, she says, "It hurts so much, I just need to die." And that.
I couldn't hear you. Okay, now there you are. Sorry.
Oh, you really couldn't hear me?
For like a brief moment. Sorry, people.
So yeah, my fault. Like I said, bear with us. But after Charlie died, Annie, the mom, she says this line. She goes, "It hurts so much, I just need to die."
Mm-hmm.
And that line, I somehow replicated the chills. It felt like she wasn't acting.
Yeah.
That you ever hurt so much, you feel like you just need to die, to not exist, anything to stop the pain.
Yeah.
And I think the pain of losing a child, although we, Lord willing, won't feel that. I don't know. You don't always come back from it. I imagine, and I think that's what Ari's hitting at here. They don't come back from it.
Didn't hear you again. Kind of cut out there. For a second.
I did.
Yeah.
What's the last thing you heard?
I heard everything for the last like 3 seconds. It just kind of popped out for a second. I don't know if that's just on my end or if that's in the audio too. I also am not seeing the timer right now, so I don't know.
I do see the timer.
You see the timer. Okay.
But yeah, always let me know. Keep doing that. Let me know when I pop out. Okay.
Okay.
But so Annie wakes up that night. She goes home afterwards, right? And she hears the. And then
I feel like I can tally how many times you do that in this episode.
Annie wakes that night to find a swarm of ants leading to Peter's dead body. And then she wakes up from a nightmare, a sleepwalking trance. She's standing over her son's bed, prompting a conversation with Peter. And Peter, which is kind of neat, in that moment says, "Why are you afraid of me?"
Mm-hmm.
What an interesting thing to muster in that moment.
Yeah.
I'd be swinging on her.
Yeah.
He says, "Why are you afraid of me?" And she involuntarily confesses what we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That not only did she not want to have him, she tried to induce a miscarriage. She tried to murder him in her womb. One of the, I can't even say it without, she wakes up and she was experiencing a vision within a vision. Got a little inception going on there, I think. Shout out IMDb, by the way, as I read through this to kind of just, all I'm doing is going through the synopsis to bring it back. That was one of the hardest scenes in any movie to experience. It's so unique.
I would argue that the wild, like, demonic type things we see in, like, especially in the third act, not only terrifying, but not as terrifying or as uncomfortable as some of these scenes just that seem so much more realistic, like having this awful conversation with your firstborn.
Yeah, I can't.
It's
right after burying
it's almost a relief when things start hitting the fan.
Yeah, it is. It's so built up.
Yeah, it's almost a relief, like a pressure valve release, because
in a great way.
Because by the end of, like, by the third act, really, by the end of this movie, I don't know who you're even supposed to root for anymore, because this whole family is corrupted.
I guess for them to survive, maybe.
I think so, but I think by this point in the movie, I think you kind of.
There's not a lot.
Do you still think at this point? I can't remember, but at this point in the film, do you still think there's any hope for this family, or do you almost feel like it's more of a mercy that they don't?
Yeah, I don't know. It was like, I guess a glimmer, because they're being honest now, even if the conversations are really, really poisonous.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a glimmer, but it's definitely the graph is going to the bottom right. It's getting bad. They're going to hell in a handbasket. Literally. Yeah, exactly. Also thought the brutal honesty there about trying to kill him, and then all of a sudden she's drenched in fire. It was just almost too much. Like, I watched that scene, and to go from that, then she's drenched in fire. Right after thinking I couldn't be afraid of movies anymore, dude, I felt like a baby. Again.
I know.
And then somebody yells, what's happening? Why is everyone scared? And he yelled, stop, and I got it. And then that was just some of my notes. But because what we do see, though, is a little bit after that, and the crazy vision is she does get her family, Annie does, to recite an incantation. They get Charlie's sketchbook, and Steve and Peter were asleep. She claims she summoned Charlie. We definitely think that that's not, at this point.
Right. Charlie doesn't exist anymore. She's gone on. I can't hear you.
What about now?
I can hear you now.
This is a demon. This is Payman.
Yeah.
I think Payman was with John. I think Payman was with her.
Mm-hmm.
So she wakes him up, and then all of a sudden Charlie seemingly possesses Annie and speaks through her with a little girl's voice. Steve snaps her out of it, douse her with water, and all of a sudden Peter screams out, confused, that poor guy.
Yeah.
So it's interesting too, because one of the scenes as she was trying to convince them to do the seance, she tries to burn the book that she used, and it burns her.
Mm-hmm.
And then right when she get her husband to do it, he's had enough. He thinks he's indulging a psychosis.
Yeah.
But then we get.
How could you not think that?
You would. Yeah. So believable.
Yeah.
You would think she needs help.
Thinking that, like,
a long time ago.
Thinking that his wife just lost, he just lost a child. Of course he's going to think that.
Lost one, didn't want the one that is alive. How crazy is that?
Yeah.
And then we get Peter at school again. He sees that same strange light that Charlie saw, which I thought was really interesting.
Back real quick, right after the seance.
Get over here and get spanked.
Right after the seance.
Sorry, Pip.
Peter says something interesting. He says something uh, like, I can't remember his exact wording, but he says something along the lines of, "Did you feel that? Did nobody else feel that?"
The air is flexing. Is what
The
he's
air
doing.
is flexing. So at this
My
point,
husband feels nothing, by the way.
he's not. I don't think anybody feels what Peter felt because I think he's not possessed yet, but the process has started.
Yeah.
And now his mother's marked him for death.
100%. And there's
Anyway, sorry. Go
I
back
just
to
wanted
what
to use the time too to say, like, there's this guttural drawl of background music. It's so sick. It's so mood setting. That we'll get into, who did the score, but it made it all work. It was the glue that held it all together. So then Peter's at school, and he sees that light, right? And then Peter's kind of bought into something's happening because his dad kind of admonishes him. Oh, no, pardon me. The dad gets on to Annie, as we know, thinks he's feeding it. And then we get we kind of get this. She trashes her studio in frustration. Remember that? She breaks that tie. By the way, her hands on that scene in the conference room looked like old lady hands.
Yeah,
I think that's on purpose because they were super.
I think so.
But
that's a good point.
I thought that was an interesting one because they looked like really old lady hands. So Charlie's spirit draws in her old sketchbook supernaturally. Peter sees a vision of his dead sister in the corner. They go back to that, right? Where we had the hoodie last time.
Yeah.
This time her head falls off and it turns into just a ball. I think it's like a basketball or something. And then he gets choked in his bed. Not in a good way. So Peter accuses his mother of sleepwalking him and attacking him again. I mean, that kind of fits.
Yeah.
She says, no, that's not what happened. She tries to explain herself. She also agrees something supernatural is happening. Double super. And that she's the only one who can stop it. So she thinks she's Superman. And then we also see a mark above his bed that looks similar to other ones. And we see a word similar to when he goes to school. So
is it the same symbol we see on the
doormat?
The pole.
Yes. Yes, I believe that's also on the doormat.
It is, yeah. And she says something about that doormat, doesn't she, to Joan, saying that like her mother used to have the same one. Or
exactly right. That's exactly right. Because she does go back there for help, by the way. She does run to Joan. She's like, okay, there's just one person that empathizes and sympathizes with me. And she's not there, but the camera shows us inside Joan's place. And it's just witchcraft paraphernalia. Tons of it. And a photo of Peter. Remember that? Inside the ceremonial triangle. And that symbol again. So then we move forward in the movie where Annie learns that symbol actually is associated with King Payman. I think I got his spelling wrong, by the way. But so he's one of the kings of hell. And then she's looking through a photo album and oh wait, Joan is no stranger. She was friends with my dead grandmother. Really close. So all of a sudden the one light thing she thought she had in her life, this random act of kindness from this stranger, was all a facade. Not only a facade, it was malevolent.
Yeah.
It was sickening. It's after her.
It was absolutely constructed.
Yeah. And then, so she, through that kind of, it gives us that she kind of learns that one, Joan and, her mother were the same coven, and that they're actually all about gaining riches and conjuring payments. They get these promises if they conjure payment into a male's body. They bring this king from hell back to earth. She then discovers Ellen, her mom. So Annie goes up to the attic, right? Discovers her mom's headless corpse. And then Peter's just going at it. No, I'm joking. That's not funny. That's not, what on earth? Ari Aster, you thought you were sick? Apparently, I took it up a notch. Bam!
Sorry, people.
Yeah, Rob was out of pocket for that one. Get up. It's Hereditary. Am I going to do the get up thing, wake my whole house up, and people get mad at me and yell at me?
Yeah,
I'm about
probably.
to go all Hereditary up in this house. So So then all of a sudden she's like, oh yeah, it's a demon. I like this part actually. Peter's at school. We get another classroom shot. And Joan is across the way, right across the street. Kind of like that Halloween-esque shot when Jamie Lee Curtis looks out there. And she's just shouting at Peter, Peter, get out. And she says, I expel you. And Peter bashes his own face into his desk.
Yeah.
Bad man. I don't think he had a lot of say so. I think he's a doll in the dollhouse.
That was
Bam. And that does snapping out of his trance though. So maybe that's his ethereal fighting his physical. Maybe that was actually kind of him fighting back.
Maybe so.
So we do get
trying to push like King Piranha out or whatever.
Yeah, getting out of that because he's tripping. He even sees himself smile in his reflection. He's losing who he is. Payment's setting in, and I think that's one of those little last. Kind of how you twitch when you're dead. You know, any last little. He's already knocked out, and he's just swinging. You know, he's just trying to get out of it, but it's too late. There's something bigger going on. But her saying, Peter, get out, was so haunting to me. I don't know why. She also yells some... What did you say?
It's creepy. It's bone-chilling.
It's bone-chilling is a great word for it. She yells some words, too, as she's like chanting, that were written above the little girl's bed. Perene or something like that. I have to look at my notes. Once again, I'm here at mommy. I'm back to mommy here.
Why do you have that in your phone?
Xantane. She says
Xantane. Do you want to know why you have that in your phone?
Well, no, it's in my notes about this movie. I think this movie's a modern Psycho.
Okay.
Sorry, people. Then we get a shot. I got in my notes. I actually really love this. This is kind of going even away from that. We do get this. We get the punishment brings wisdom thing on the board. I thought was interesting. But there's a shot where it's just a ticking clock and a phone ringing. That's the only audio you get, right? And it glides from right to left, and it goes through any obstruction seamlessly, as if the real house is a dollhouse. So it's a shot of the actual house, but it was using dollhouse physics.
Yeah,
and I just thought that's just. I mean, I don't like
cool.
doing this.
I didn't get to watch that again. I didn't catch that. That's really interesting because you're right. The whole thing that's probably starting in the dollhouse is to perpetuate that they don't have control.
Yeah, and they're pawns, dude. They're pawns. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So then, excuse me, Steve brings dude home. Okay. We also get that shot of Annie standing underneath the tree house with the pouring rain with her mom's scrapbook.
Pretty normal.
Yeah. And it says here in the notes I was looking on IMDb for just a synopsis here that Peter's room behind her in the real house does not exist. I'm not sure what that means. But Steve's bringing Peter's home. Annie approaches the car, this is really interesting. She's dry.
Yeah.
No sign of downpour. Got that right off the IMDb thing. She says, hey, mom's decapitated corpse is in the attic. Whoops.
Whoopsies.
What did you say?
I said, whoopsies.
Yeah, shows him the photographs where that they all were wearing the seal of payment. Explains the family became cursed when she tried contacting Charlie, the grandma. She also explains the connection to Charlie's sketchbook that Steven didn't destroy it, and that's when he's like, nope. And he sleeps on the couch.
Right.
So he's basically had enough. That was really her last, I would say, lifeline too. But unfortunately, he reaches his limit. Ari Aster does this such a nice setup and payoff thing right before he could have relieved her and helped her by throwing the book in. He had his limit with her right before. So it goes there. Boom, bang, boom. One of the best scenes in the movie. And if you want to take us through it, so basically the scene I'm talking about is Peter in his room in a certain corner. And a certain lady in a corner.
I'm not blanking on this.
I'll say it. His mom was in the top corner of his room.
Oh. Yeah.
Uh,
Okay, we're already here. Okay, I thought. Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
we're already here. Yeah, we're here.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Okay. Yeah. She's hanging herself.
Oh, we're both okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Sorry. You go ahead
Okay.
because I went too far. I think.
Okay. Yes, but that's a great part too. So the mom's in the corner of Peter's room.
Oh yes.
Unnaturally.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. This was okay. I remember. It's weird that I forgot that part because I remember this scene specifically in the movie theater.
Oh, cool.
More so than my rewatch because in the theater, I think that freaked me out the most.
And people were discovering it at different times.
Yes, I remember. Yeah, because it went around. Other people in the theater saw it before I did.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
And I'm like, well, what am I? What am I supposed to look at right now? Because I can hear the people behind me. Did we see this in the theater together?
There's a chance.
I think we did.
There's actually a strong chance.
Yeah, I think we did see this together because I'm trying to think of who else I would have saw this in
There's a
2018.
strong chance.
I think it was
at that time too.
Yeah.
Because that was.
I think we saw this together. Huh?
That was even before I started at the theater.
Yeah, I think we were both at the same employee.
It was the year I started at the theater. So it depends on what month it came out. Did we see this together? That's wild.
I'm almost positive we did. I think we went after work one day.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a nice.
Because we were describing the same experience.
Yeah, I heard
other people in the.
I did hear someone explain their viewing of it that same way, and then that's when I tapped in. I was like, "You're right, it did do that." People.
This is what I was saying earlier about how we get the opposite of jump scares here. We get this slow burn. She's creeping in the corner of the bedroom in a supernatural way.
Yeah, body. She looks possessed.
She is.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
And and that almost slow fade from the corner.
And then, do you remember how she exits the room? She floats right on out in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Peter doesn't even see her.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get this shot later where all of a sudden she flies after him and he starts running like a Scooby-Doo. And that's what leads him up to the attic.
Like a Scooby-Doo.
So he goes up to the attic and he pulls up that cool ladder thing you see where, she can't get up here.
Mm-hmm.
She's hanging on the ceiling, bashing her face in there. And then he sees his father's charred corpse, and then possessed mother follows him right up there. The attic's now down, and what Peter finds in the attic though is flies, candles, the photos with his eyes gouged out.
Mm-hmm.
Ellen's body's gone, by the way. The grandma's body's gone, and all of a sudden his mom's hovering above him. What is she doing, Bobby?
She was on her phone, I believe.
No, she was severing her own head.
Yeah, she's severing her head.
With piano wire.
Mm-hmm. You know what's a little thing I noticed actually, no, I didn't notice this in my rewatch. This is something I thought about. Oftentimes in epic fantasy poems, which is not really anything to do with this.
Maybe more than you think.
They layer out Earth, Heaven, and Hell often by putting so Earth will be where a lot of your main story is taking place.
Interesting.
But maybe the top of a castle or top of a hill or top of something is this signifies heaven, and of course a basement or something like that could signify hell.
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting. In so many horror movies, you see a lot of basement activity. The Conjuring, they chose to do this in an attic.
Barbarian.
What?
Barbarian.
Oh yeah.
They did choose to do this in an attic.
They choose to do this on the most elevated plane, which I'm not saying that that was a purposeful thing.
Interesting.
That's what I take from it though is in a creepy way, this is religious. Just not any religion that you or I, or hopefully most of our listeners, subscribe to, but it is a religious, and it's almost I don't know. I just think there's something
I
there.
like that. I mean, and two, I think it also sets up because it leads to because like these naked old dudes come out, right? First of all, Peter must have a ball in 40 time. He was fast running from his mom, but then these demon worshippers, these Satan worshippers come out naked,
Mhm.
and he throws himself out the window. Where else are you going to go? Your mom's cutting her head off, floating in the air. There's these naked, probably Minnesota 2s or 3s. And then wherever this was shot. And here's why I think it's interesting it was up top too. Because do you think when Peter throws himself out the window, he hits his head, he's seemingly knocked out, right? Do you think he dies or at least goes unconscious enough where Payman's finally arrived here on Earth?
I think so. I think so.
Maybe it needed to be high up to potentially kill Peter.
Yeah, that's the practicalness of having it in the attic.
Oh yeah, there's always juxtaposed with what you were saying, of course.
Yeah, but I do think this is very symbolic of him. Maybe Peter leaving the room, but not Payman.
That's great. Yeah, that's why we pay you $0.
Yeah, I'm worth every penny.
So Peter rises, and he has that glowing light. You remember?
Peter rises.
Oh, nice.
What?
Yeah. Wait. And maybe his name is even Peter for a reason. Because Payman is associated with hell, was associated with Christianity, the other side of the coin. But he didn't follow. You see those lights that we've seen, which we now know, I think we understand, is Payman. It's a physical manifestation.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, and again, how interesting is that they don't use a demonic. They don't use a shadow. They don't use something unsettling. They use something that's like they use light.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Innocent, almost fairy-like, very like childish, almost like. There's an innocence there, and I think that must be purposeful because evil wouldn't present itself as evil, would it? If he's trying to seduce you.
No, agreed. It would be a bunch of naked old dudes.
Hey, that's I don't have a joke there.
It's your thing. So I agree, and then you would probably get one of the most iconic shots and highly debated shots in modern cinema horror genre film history, right? So his mom hovers into the treehouse. And if Hereditary wasn't terrifying, I would have found that silly. But I was too scared to find it silly, so it worked.
Yeah. No, it
couldn't
does.
breathe, so it worked.
I think that's the payoff of having such a intense, like slow burn of a movie.
Mm-hmm.
That it can elevate you to this point, and when it gets real wild, it works because you've been so bothered by the.
I'm about to get real wild. This camera will come back on. So then, coolest shot in the movie for me. I mean, it's that one was technically like literally from a technical perspective, but is Peter goes up into this haunted house. I wish. Well, kind of. What do you call it? Treehouse.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this assembly of naked devil worshippers. There's a woman with long hair and a bathrobe. And Charlie's decapitated head sits atop a statue of Payman.
Mm-hmm.
Peter looks around, obviously in and out, flat expression. And then we see Annie and Ellen's headless bodies lying bowing on the floor in front of the statue.
Mm-hmm.
Then Joan's voice, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Calls Peter Charlie as a woman crowns him, but welcomes Peter as Payman, while the coven hails the demon's arrival.
Did you notice before this is what I wanted to talk about at the end. Before the crowning, the decapitated bodies were facing the statue.
I didn't, actually, only when I heard it in research later.
but when he is crowned and they pan out, the bodies are now facing him.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's so
They're
eerie.
bowing to
We're
him.
back, baby.
And that's maybe my favorite and most unsettling shot.
That is a really unsettling shot.
It's so, I mean, something about just corpses moving when you don't get to see them move, you know?
And that is why this movie, because some people have always said, hey, it would have been better without the supernatural. And I say, hey, you leave this movie alone.
Yeah.
This movie's perfect. as
Who's
is.
saying that? Just random people
Yeah,
who don't,
it's literally in
who aren't in the
Discord.
business?
Yeah, exactly. Bunch of weenies.
Bunch of weenies.
So that's Ari Aster's Hereditary, one of the scariest movies of all time.
Yeah.
I said it. It's on my horror Rushmore.
No, for sure. For sure.
It changed when we saw it. It just, you left there and you knew you saw something special.
Mm-hmm.
We may have saw that together. So
I think we did.
That's Ari Aster's Hereditary. That movie also set in stone. The man was going to work for a long time and do whatever he wants. And he achieved all of that. Now he's living it out. Now I'll tell you we are going to get into Midsommar. And Rob, we are at hour 24, so Midsommar is just going to have to be a little quicker.
Okay, yeah.
It won't be as deep a dive because we're on this thing for this one doing video.
Yeah, I think that's okay though.
I do too.
I love Midsommar. This one is easier for me to do a rewatch, but I think we can cover that.
Can I tell you something funny about Ari Aster's 2019 hit Midsommar? First watch for me.
I remember you saying that.
First watch for me. I don't know how.
Okay,
that
so
happened.
now that you've seen it once, right? I think I've seen it 3 times.
Wow.
At least twice. I know I've seen it twice. I think it's been 3 times. Why don't you give us a quick like summary of like the plot, and then we can get into some of the more nuanced parts of it.
Great movie. I will say.
Wow. Thanks.
What'd you say?
Thanks. Bye, people.
Yeah. So Ari Aster, Florence Pugh, Jack Rayner, Wilhelm Blomgren. I thought the Blomgren is that thing you get on a toilet. Torquia Will Holter, ladies and freaking gentlemen.
Eyebrows, right?
Eyebrows. Yep. So Florence. Okay, right off the bat. First of all, the score in Hereditary was amazing, and sometimes it was a lack of score that made it so good when it went silent. I wanted to say who did it. The score composer was Colin Stetson. And then Midsommar had an amazing one too. And its score composer, I just want to give a shout out, is the Haxon Cloak. I thought that was cool. That's what he's like. His name's like, I think Bobby Krilic. But he's called the Haxon Cloak. And it did take, I think the score in Midsommar took it to almost legendary. It was this paganistic fairy tale. Like I all during the day, so disorienting. But just to give the people, like you asked 15 minutes ago, a synopsis is you got Danny and Christian, Florence Pugh, Jack Rayner, respectively, are a young American couple relationship on the brink of falling apart. Another one of those 2 separate movies like Hereditary, the family thing in the beginning and then the later. Their relationships on the brink falling apart. This is a breakup movie, by the way. Know that.
Hey, what's the better breakup movie, Midsommar or Forgetting Sarah Marshall?
Dude, I saw you post that on Twitter. I need to watch that one again. I haven't watched it since I was probably like 13.
It's such a great movie.
I can't remember it. I'm sure it is. I remember I have this positive like.
If you need a palate cleanser for all the horror you've ingested.
Oh, that's great. I will.
Forgetting Sarah Marshall is the place to do that.
And like now, what's his name is like this guru Jesus figure in podcasting. He's
yeah. This was back when Russell Brand still like seemed funny to me.
I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know much of his content, to be honest, but I think I think he got sober though.
He did.
I think he has a pretty cool story, but he's very charming. He's a funny guy.
Yeah, he's got some weird views about some things going on now, but not to get too political about it.
Let's get him and Alex Jones on and battle this thing.
Yeah, let's do it.
So their relationships on the brink of falling apart, and then the scariest part of the movie is a horrific family tragedy. That's why it's funny. Ari Aster just he did a Reddit AMA yesterday on the 17th of April, depending when you listen to this. And the very first question on it was, "Are you okay?" Well, I'll pose it again, Ari. Are you okay? What'd you say?
Yeah, because we have a family tragedy here of her sister. It was her sister, right?
Yeah,
her sister
so, and her parents. But,
and her parents, yeah.
so after the family tragedy keeps them together, because you could tell, Christian invites grieving Danny to join him and the boys on a once-in-a-lifetime trip to Midsommar Festival in a remote Swedish village.
Which one of the friends is from this.
He's from Sweden, and then I think it's their post-grad class. They're all a little older.
It's they're in grad school.
Yeah,
they're in grad school because two of the characters are writing about the same subject.
Yeah, we find out they're doing their what do you call that? Your
thesis.
Thesis. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I was so mad at Christian in that moment because
yeah, I know.
So he invites them to go to that Midsommar Festival. Danny's going to tag along, mostly out of guilt, because Christian's like, she won't come anyways, but sure enough, she does. So what begins as a carefree summer holiday in the North European land of eternal sunlight and milkmaids, I added that part, takes a sinister turn when the insular villages invite their guests to partake in festivities that render the pastoral paradise increasingly unnerving and viscerally disturbing. We also have another A24 movie here. That synopsis was by A24 releasing. Let the festivities begin. So, Rob, since we have to go quicker in general, I'm going to pull out my notes. Do you feel comfortable going through, or do you like me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I can take us through this.
Let's get it, baby. Let's go, Bobby. Get up. Get to the best horror movie. Get up.
So they get over to this remote. Huh?
I said, get on, Bobby.
Okay. It's
a macabre fairy tale, God.
Yeah. This is I've heard it. You're right about that. I've heard it described as folk horror.
Yes.
Which is, I mean, there's not that many. That. Yeah. And like you said, it's all in the daytime. So, and there's something so disturbing about that.
Chainsaw Massacre, 1974.
I think cults in general are just something super interesting.
What are? Oh, yeah.
The psychology of it, and then also just creepy. I mean, it's just creepy. So we find ourselves in this remote little village, where Florence Pugh, who is who you're following, that's her main character, she's a little put off by all this from the beginning.
Yeah.
She's the first person to kind of sense like, this is a miss. The guys are pretty into it, right? Because we have the one guy that's from this place, and he's brought some friends home, just like everybody seemed to have brought somebody home for this little festival, this solstice.
Hey, what's that
May
about?
Queen, May flower situation or whatever, and then you have the two guys, her boyfriend and I forget the other one's name, who are there to study this.
Mm-hmm.
They're writing their thesis, and it's kind of a classic cult mentality of like, we're going to invite you in, we're going to make you feel real comfortable, and we may have some different ways about us, but otherwise,
you think
friendly
they're onto something at first because they're so happy,
right?
You know?
Oh, 100%. Like they've escaped from the cynical world of capitalism,
of the rat race,
right? 100%, yeah. And we quickly see that there's something amiss here, right? Because we have this very intricate scene where they're all sitting at this dinner table. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Can you? Okay. And
I'm behind you.
We are. And then we're brought to this chilling scene where two people have been selected, it seems, an older couple, to go atop this cliff where everyone's watching, and they just throw themselves off.
They go for it.
They just go for it. One dies immediately, one doesn't, and they have to have their skull crushed in. Then you start to find out that there are segments of life in this community where no one lives past a certain age. Correct me, was that age 60?
72 is when you get...
72. And they've basically believed that once they've hit that age, they need to go on to make room for, I guess, progress, or to I guess, attains a
It
certain.
had euthanasia vibes.
Yeah, 100%. So at this point, our visitors are ready to go. Most of them, anyway. A couple that they meet in their journey is like, we're getting out of here. Then they disappear. We're told by some of the cult members that they already that they already left, that they packed up and left. But we were following Florence Pugh's character. We know that's not true. She knows it's not true. Okay, so she's begging her boyfriend for them to leave. For whatever reason, he's not budging.
I think the thesis is what kind of keeps them there, I guess, is the argument.
It is, but I also argue specifically for him because he doesn't seem as scholarly as the guy who was going on this trip specifically to write this paper, to write this thesis. Christian is kind of brought into this a little bit. I think he's kind of brought into the cult mentality a little bit because he caught
the redhead.
A woman there caught his eye, and she's kind of after him too. So there's a selfish, maybe lustful element here.
Hey, to all cults, I think are sex.
Run that by me again.
All cults are sex. I think you can almost.
Sex. Yeah, sex based. Right. I agree. There's always an element of freeness maybe in a cult that like standard society doesn't really accept. So there's this idea that like he doesn't have to like. Monotony is not really a thing here, maybe. So, and then eyebrows. What's his name?
Will Poulter.
He's also kind of caught up in this, right? He also gets Mark also gets derailed by somebody there. I did not choose the correct word there. He gets distracted by a female.
Yeah. That
he's interested in, and so they're in a kind of classic horror way. They're kind of getting picked off one by one.
There's like two movies here. Like there's the huge trauma in like Florence Pugh, who's kind of aware, and there's like the
and her thing really is codependency in an unhealthy way, right? Because she's hanging on to this relationship she knows is not it, but she's doing it because she's unhappy.
When he was trying to leave, like in an early shot, and she wouldn't let him, that was hard to watch. But
hey, did you notice that in the beginning scene, and this is important, did you notice in the beginning scene, one of the beginning scenes of her apartment, you see a painting of a bear?
Yeah, I love that. He shows us again, like in Hereditary.
He shows us the ending. Keep that in mind when we watch Beau is Afraid.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. It may not be horror.
Well, even if it's not, though, so many movies make, and books or whatever, make a full circle.
Yeah, 100%.
To some degree. Okay, so, guys, and speeding it along, we can always come back to this movie if we
can I say this? I think that both of us, Hereditary sits atop Ari Aster.
I think this is a better horror movie. Yeah, I think it's a better horror movie. Midsommar.
Oh, so we might be different on this.
I find it. I don't know if I find the movie more appealing, but I do find the idea more appealing.
It is
I think the whole thing. It's hard. It's
I'm
hard
in
for
love
me.
with Hereditary.
It's hard. I think it's a great film.
Yeah, it's one of my.
I do not fault it at all. If you said that was your favorite horror film, I would.
It's literally. It might be a top 5 movie all time for me.
It's hard for me to wrestle with the demonic thing for too long. I think that's just a weird thing about me.
No, I'm with you. I don't rewatch it often at all.
Yeah, that's like
my second or third time.
Can't be like a comfort movie kind of thing for me. No. It's far too far. But I think Midsommar, maybe because it is so, it kind of pumps the brakes on the severity of.
Takes its time too, 2.5.
Well, here's the thing. Now, here's the thing. This is almost kind of, in a weird way, a revenge movie. And so the bad things that happen to people, you almost don't really, because you don't like many of the characters here, do you?
No.
You don't like Christian. You don't like...
Mark pees on their ancestral tree.
Yeah. And so...
You do like, though, William Jackson Harper's character, Josh. The guy writing his thesis, the original guy writing his thesis.
Yeah, you do like
He
like
does
him.
show
Yeah,
some weakness too at some point.
yeah, they all do, and I wonder, and I'd have to dive a little deeper for it, but they all bring about some sort of like representation of maybe sin or some some kind of, not that the characters are asking for it like in like a lot of the Hitchcock movies, but in a, you've kind of put yourself in this position. Even Florence Pugh's character, you put yourself in the position.
What was up with the scissors under the baby's pillow? That freaked me out.
That was creepy.
I still don't. It doesn't really touch on that.
It's such a beautiful looking movie.
Oh my gosh, that Sistine Chapel and all that was just gorgeous.
What is so bothersome is how the dark undertone of a movie that's so aesthetically pleasing, right?
Yes.
So anyway,
yes. It's almost a
back
Wes
to
Anderson visually.
Yeah, it does kind of have a Wes Anderson vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much as camera angles, but the
aesthetic set pieces,
like.
colors,
yeah,
yellows.
All right, so now, as characters are being picked off, Christian is going more and more. He's getting deeper and deeper into this.
And I think Josh's weakness, I have a note on that, by the way, because they all get so enveloped in its insanity, this village, this unending sunshine, that the one grounded dude that he was, his weakness was the pursuit of intellect, regardless of customs and cultures and rules.
That's true. I
don't remember.
That's true. There's after that couple just yeets themselves off the cliff. There's a. I'm bothered by the way some of the characters responded, and I think that is where you start to see where everyone is.
One of the guys upstairs. That does, by the way, the actor, the old man, was regarded as one of the most beautiful men in the world when he was young. He's a very famous.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, he's regarded as
the guy who falls off.
Gets his skull bashed in.
Isn't that hard to watch? Because they show a lot more than you expect. When you think the camera's going to turn away, it definitely doesn't.
I love that about Ari Aster.
Well, no, he really faces the unsettling. We saw more of that decapitation in Hereditary than I thought we would.
Yeah. There's a couple of really tough scenes in Midsommar.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
I like the sunflower eyes. That dude the white-haired guy that threw himself off, he reminded me of the guy that sang with Miley Cyrus on New Year's Eve.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Here's a great line from this movie. This movie has a lot. This movie was kind of like subtly funny. I found.
No, there's a lot of funny. I mean, remember when they get high when they first get there?
Yeah.
I mean, that was some great stuff.
Yes.
Like, one guy said, I mean, unfortunately, you realize like right after he's being serious, like it doesn't get dark there. It's dark. It's daylight in the dark. But he says something like, hey, "It's not 9 p.m. It can't be 9 p.m. or whatever," and you just think it's fun. You didn't think they're high. You think it's 4 o'clock.
I love how he perpetuated tripping. It was really, really cool.
Yeah,
how he manipulated the visuals.
And isn't it interesting that like Florence's character is seemingly the only one who falls under like a panic attack because of it, and she's trying to escape right then. She's trying to escape while everyone else is sitting on their butt.
Yeah,
and isn't that interesting because that's kind of how the rest of the movie plays out, doesn't it?
What about this line? I think I ate one of her pubic hairs.
Well, that's where we are in the movie. Christian kind of gets entranced now. And he's during this dance sequence.
Yeah, this Hocus Pocus-esque dance sequence.
Yeah, where Florence's character hangs in there. And because she's like the last one standing, essentially, she becomes the May Queen, which is what they called me in college.
Yes, they do.
Anyway,
you also have that dress.
So anyway, while this is going on, Christian's being seduced away in one of the weirdest scenes in the film, where this woman really just wants him for mating reasons.
Maya.
Yeah.
Maja. Played by Isabella Brill. Great. That's
Yeah.
a crazy redhead.
Sorry, people. You're my crazy redhead.
It's funny as before I started shaving brown. Yeah, I'm actually brown. It's weird, but the beard has the tint. I don't know. Continue.
Anyway,
I loved when he was inside of her and the mom or whatever grabs us. Continue. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry, people. He just says that and then just...
Midsummer's wild, though. You guys need to know that if you're listening to this, this is not for the faint of heart. Ari Aster is...
Ari Aster's he goes into this room and he basically, he's having sex with this girl while...
Easy.
I don't know, 10 women or whatever just naked or watching.
He didn't have performance anxiety.
Yeah, for real. And while they're just kind of doing this like flowy motion around them.
It's called a hump.
It's what?
I said that's called a hump.
I meant the women.
No, I'm just joking.
And while this is happening, Florence, his character, sees that he's gone off. She knows that something's amiss. And this just kind of seals his fate into this cult. Once he's done his business, she doesn't want him anymore. He's clearly
Sexy
used...
how you worded that. No, I'm joking. I hate him for this, by the way. He's being unfaithful to Danny.
Right, yeah. So he seals his fate here. Because Florence now has been named the Maid Queen. And you come to find towards the end of the film that these people that have been invited not as guests but as sacrifices.
Love that.
And including one member of their own little clan, and they're going to be burned alive. They're going to be burned alive, and we have Christian amongst these in the innards of a bear. What?
It's just
or just the idea of that. Yeah. I mean, it's messed up, and you have to wonder what they're consuming.
Also blew the cover off my mic. No, continue.
You have to wonder what they're consuming because they're all kind of lost it, right? They've all kind of been sucked into this ideology, because now even Florence has sort of lost her own will and has become indoctrinated.
It's so disorienting that it's always sunny, not in Philadelphia.
Yes. Yes. And now she is made up as this queen, and this sacrifice is essentially for her. And you're watching her, who has been pushed through so much, and now she's on the other side of it, and she's actively embracing it. In this final shot of watching her boyfriend and the other people there that she loved and cared about,
she chooses her boyfriend.
She chooses
for him to be sacrificed,
and she sits there in her like gown of flowers, and
love that gown,
and her Mayday throne.
Mm-hmm.
And you focus in on dead eyes and this quirky little smirk as she just watches them burn. And very similar to Hereditary, where you're closing out on a character who you don't know you're really watching the same character that you started with, right? Yeah. Like, they're not really the same people anymore, and they have this deadness behind their eyes.
I think it was working towards
behind the eyes.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Rob.
No, just a. I was just gonna say like a mystery behind the eyes that you don't fully understand, especially
I
in
love
Midsummer,
that.
because in Hereditary you kind of know what's happened to
Hmm.
him, but you really don't understand Florence's state of mind by the end of Midsummer. Also, this is the first movie I saw her in, and I was just blown away
I
by her
was just about to
performance.
say her performance was insane.
Her performance is
She's
fantastic in this.
untrained too. She didn't go to school for this. He actually had people read for the part, and Florence was the only female that couldn't read for the part because she was doing a job for Park Chang Woo, or I gotta get the director right, but so she couldn't read for it. But him and the cinematographer couldn't stop talking about her. So like, you know what? We keep bringing her
Mhm.
up. She's got to be our girl. And also,
Did she already have any kind of notable work before this?
I think there's a not in this level. No,
Yeah.
this was probably
Okay.
her breakthrough.
This is her big break, then.
Yeah,
This is like her.
100%. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
I like too. This whole movie works, and that shot you're given with her, it's almost like Hitchcockian, where you feel
Mhm.
you want her to pick her boyfriend and do the bad, but
Yeah.
you don't feel the
Yeah.
guilt. So like,
Isn't
go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
No, I was just gonna say, Ari says basically this whole movie works towards. I was listening to an interview, this grand catharsis, but that it's
Mhm.
poisonous. I just love the way he
Yes.
worded that.
Yes.
That's all. Go
And that's
ahead.
why I think this is a little vengeful,
Yes,
because
100%.
she gets revenge on this guy who's treated her poorly and brought her here.
Yep.
You know, we can blame him in a way. I mean, you blame the friend who brought them there on purpose because he was part of this wacko group, but you really kind of blame Christian for putting her through all this. So you have this vengeful take, and I think that's why this movie doesn't hit. Um, it doesn't hit some of the creepy vibes that maybe Hereditary does.
Yeah, he did because it's more
Because
melodramatic and like this ultimate
it
breakup.
it is, and
movie.
you don't care about many of these people. Like you kind of think they're gonna.
It wasn't scary.
It's not. See, that's why it's hard for me to say this is a horror movie, because it's not scary. It's troubling.
Yeah,
It's very troubling. It's very disturbing.
I did
And I guess
love
that
it.
they
By the way,
still fall under the horror genre. I didn't get scared from this movie. I got terrified watching Hereditary.
Yep.
Like one of those movies
which I
that
think is
I
why
saw in the
it's
theater.
up here for me.
I couldn't watch straight forward. I'd have to like cut my eyes just slightly to the right or left to avoid having to deal with
I
it.
did that while
Now I
watching
didn't see.
Hereditary right now. I
Yeah.
look off
Oh
screen.
yeah. 100%.
Did you really for real?
I 100%
Isn't
did.
that crazy? We're grown men,
Yeah. Yeah, it's disturbing.
trained
It's
fighters,
disturbing how much.
killers, and we still look off of our little screen, our little rectangle.
Mhm.
It's insanity.
I didn't see Midsummer in the theater. I watched that at home for the first
Me too.
time. So I don't have that theatrical feel to it that I did with Hereditary.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is still a fantastic
This movie's
movie.
amazing.
It's
Hereditary is one of my favorite all time. But dude, this movie's
it's
great.
it's almost like a contrast, like two opposite sides of the spectrum with Hereditary and Midsummer. You have a lot of darkness, both physically and metaphorically, in Hereditary, and in this movie, I feel like you're kind of in an unsettling way. You're going kind of from dark to light, but
Yeah.
not in the way that most of us experience that. Um,
Yeah.
it's so interesting because you assume that Florence's character becomes just as indoctrinated into this as the rest by the end. You don't know because
Yeah.
it kind of leaves
She
you
went
off on that.
full cult.
She did.
It does. And I think,
Yeah.
by the way, Josh did take pictures of their holy book, their scripture. So that's what really incriminated him.
That's yeah.
So then they all were like, I have stopped mass migrating in my notes. There was some line about that. And I like this movie because the twists were all like forecasted, but it didn't matter. Like the point was you had to sit in this existential dread.
Right.
And there I go. Like a breakup, it's isolating.
Yeah.
And he captured that. And he was going through one during this. He had it written for about 4 years, but he was going through one during it. And poor guy, I hope he's all right. But so honestly, I don't care that I'm not on camera. I think that we had an Ari Aster masterclass. We covered and dove deep into Hereditary, his 2018 horror masterpiece, and then Midsommar. Midsommar, as you
Yep.
say. 2008.
Midsommar.
Another, I would say, masterpiece. These are two phenomenal movies. Ari Aster is a powerhouse behind the camera and in his writing and his casting. This guy is legit. He had like 10 years where he wasn't really finding work. He wrote like one script and supported him for a couple of years and bits and pieces here and there, but he was going through his savings, and like Hereditary was like his last hurrah, by the way.
Wow.
And it hit like a wildfire.
Paid off. Yeah.
So yeah, we came in at a nice hour 53. This service will cut off soon. So I think and I appreciate you, Bobby, but I think we wonderfully journeyed through one of the best horror filmmakers and filmmakers doing it right now. You could argue still a young up and comer, has a great relationship with A24, will never have any problem getting anything made. And we are both very excited for Beau is Afraid.
Very excited. Very excited for Walking Phoenix to collaborate with him.
Yes. And I think they already talked about this neo-Western noir mix where it's Ari Aster and Joaquin Phoenix again. That's his next movie. Because he jumps right into movies.
Yeah.
He doesn't gap it. I think there's something to that with creative work, by the way. Because he doesn't sit around enough to get worried about it. And
so he jumped into this right after Midsommar?
Right after Hereditary, yes.
Wow, so he's been working on this for a while.
And then now Beau is Afraid. No, he jumped on the Midsommar right after Hereditary. Beau is Afraid there was a gap.
Okay. That's what I thought.
He knew he was going to do either a comedy or a melodrama next. He said he was kind of done with horror for a minute because he didn't want to really be typecasted.
Well, that's probably a good thing. You don't want to repeat yourself.
He can do whatever he wants to. And I agree. Yeah. Like, he's so talented, though. Like, this guy, everything he touches gold so far. Depending on how good Beau is Afraid is, we could be literally looking at another one of those really great 3 runs.
Yeah, another Hitchcock movie.
Yeah. So, I mean, they have to come, this guy's talented. So Ari Aster, ladies and gentlemen, please leave us a 5-star review, share the podcast. We'd greatly appreciate it. Also want to do a quick shout out. Once we get a set list, we'll talk about it more, but the Chattanooga Film Festival, is the next genre film festival on our radar. Google that, check it out, because it also has a virtual component regardless of where you live. Anyways, go out there and watch a bunch of horror, but also be careful to come up for air. This was a nasty double feature.
Yeah, it
was a nasty double. I'll be honest too. I actually split it one the next day. That's really just life though. But
yeah,
Bobby, I appreciate. What'd you say?
It's probably best to do that.
Hey, we're going to be in person next time, ladies. We'll talk about it, because this stuff. But we'll be in person. This is an in-person podcast. Don't worry about that. Get your computer fixed so you can see us both in person, because video is the dream. But we watch way more movies than you guys. You got Ken.
You got Rob.
Go watch Hereditary, one of the greatest horror movies of all time. See you, people.
Sorry, people.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Here's Johnny.
Can I help you?
Yes, my name is Bond. James Bond.
Make your lives extraordinary. Precious. No photo. No photo.
When there is no more room in hell, the dead will walk here.
Welcome to I Watch More Movies Than You, and please take that as a challenge. What else on earth can you spend $10 and then leave the planet for 2 hours? Only movies. Come join us as we experience, explore, and journey through the greatest art form in history.
And here we go.